Okay, welcome back to the podcast. Let me try this again. Okay, welcome back to the podcast, everybody. It has been over a week. I started recording this podcast, then I stopped because I wanted to make sure it was the best quality as far as information goes. Because today's podcast episode is all about college and college preparation, because for those that don't know, that's really my area of expertise professionally for my career. So besides health and fitness, all things college and university. So I wanted to get into it, but I really wanted to make sure I didn't leave anything out, because college is a lot. There's a lot you have to learn. I've learned so much because I've been in college off and on for over 10 years. So I just wanted to make sure that this episode was really everything that you needed to be successful. But thank you for joining, as always. My name is Haley, also on the Instagram and the YouTubes under Powerful Hippie. I'm trying to upload podcasts at least every other week. Thank you so much for joining. So, again, if you already follow me, you've seen me post a lot, probably about college in the last couple of years, because I just finished my second master's degree. But I wanted to take a little moment and really divulge of my experience as a student, and then go into my experience as an academic advisor and instructor, what I've learned in order to be the most successful, well-rounded college student. Because again, that's my profession, that's what I do, and I feel like I'm very knowledgeable. Still learning, because as colleges change and policies change and information changes, there's more things that you have to just learn and roll with, right? But I started my whole journey when I actually was dual enrolled in high school. So my high school offered an opportunity for students to be dual enrolled to earn college credit, and also use that credit to complete some classes for your high school diploma. So it was a win-win and it was really fun. It was great for me because my community college, which was Brevard Community College at the time, now is Eastern Florida State College in Melbourne, Florida. They have multiple campuses. But at the time, that was super close to my house. It was actually closer than my high school. So it was only 4 or 5 minute drive. Great college, great place to start. If you are new to college, can't stress trying, the community or state school locally to you without having to commute. It's usually cheaper and stuff too. But I started in high school, and I want to say I was like 16, because I was a junior in high school. So I was in 11th grade, and I was dual enrolled. So I was still taking some classes at high school, still taking classes at the community college, and it was great. I did have to commute to community college and high school, which was a drag, but it was cool because I got to kind of leave high school after second period, and then I didn't have to come back until fifth period. So I felt like a cool cat, me and my like I would, kind of sneak out of the high school, and my friends would come too. We'd carpool, so it was really cool. And then we'd go take our class or whatever, come back to high school, pretend like nothing happened. We got to get lunch sometimes. Sometimes classes were canceled, or we had exams, so they canceled classes. So we didn't have to do anything for like 3 hours, which was so fun. And then my senior year in high school, I was full time dual enrollment, which I think they called early admissions. And don't quote me on that. Again, it's been over 10 years, but that's what I was doing. So I was never on high school campus for actual classes. I was going to the state school community college Monday through Thursday. And the cool thing about being early admissions and full time, I did not have classes on Friday, and I was working part time at a hotel. So I was able to get some money, get some experience, and I only had to go to school Monday through Thursday. So it was really awesome, because by the time I was a senior in high school, I was just done. I loved high school, but I will tell you, I just wanted to go to college so badly. Like, that was just all I wanted to do. So I did that, and I learned so much in the experience, in my experiences with that. I was able to take a lot of general education classes, and I believe all I had to do was pay for the textbooks. So the classes were covered, or almost completely covered, and all I had to do was pay for the textbooks. So it was super affordable. I did not graduate high school with my AA. I was so close. I was like 5 classes short. So I think I was around like 45 credit hours to get an associate's in arts degree, or any associate's degree is typically 60 credit hours. I don't know any other associate's degree that's less than 60 credit hours. So after I graduated high school, I applied to different colleges. I got accepted, but the program that I really wanted to get into at Florida State University was only accepting juniors, which means that you had to have 60 credit hours or your associate's in arts degree equivalent, like equivocation equivalent, and I did not. So they were like, sorry, until you have your AA, you can't join the program. You can either come to FSU as like a transfer student, but I looked into it and they weren't going to accept a lot of my credits because I didn't have my associate's degree. And in the state of Florida, there's a reciprocity agreement from like community state colleges to universities where they will have to accept your associate's degree, your AA, your 60 credits. So you don't have to retake gen eds usually unless you're missing prerequisites for a major program like a bachelor's degree. So when I found out that if I transferred to FSU before I had my AA and I'd have to retake like, math and, humanities credits that I'd already earned and already taken and gotten, A's and B's and stuff in, I was like, all right, I'm just going to stay. So I kind of had a gap year between high school and college. So after high school, when I graduated, I took those 5 classes. I finished my associate's in arts degree, and then I transferred to Florida State University. So I got my associate's in arts degree, and I transferred to FSU in 2015, started the interior design program at FSU, and that's what I wanted to do. Ever since I was like a little kid, I wanted to be an interior designer. But did that ship go south? So at FSU and a lot of universities, they have programs that are called limited access or selective admissions or something like that. But what that means is you are kind of like conditionally accepted to the university or to the program. You're accepted to the university, but you're conditionally accepted to the program. So I was in the program. I did get into the interior design program conditionally after your first semester. I don't know if they've changed it since then, but after your first semester, you have a portfolio review. And I had taken y'all interior design classes at the community college as like my electives for my AA degree, and I loved it. I took AutoCAD. I took a design like 101 class. I took a materials design class where I went to like Home Depot. We got to do like display of our stuff, and I loved it. And I got A's in all of those classes, including AutoCAD. And AutoCAD is really hard because it's a computer software program. It takes a lot of time to render, and it's not easy to use for all the commands. And I had to learn on a Mac too, and I was not familiar with all the commands. So anywho, I thought, oh, I got the program. I got this, right? Mm-hmm. So when I started the interior design program, I was so excited. Did not realize what it was going to entail. So I had to take 3 classes, and there was no like, you have to get A's in these classes, blah, blah, blah. All they cared about was your portfolio review at the end. I did okay in the classes. I got 1A and I got 2 B's. One of the classes was like a hand drafting class. The instructors were super hands off for those 3 classes, by the way. So you kind of got a booklet this big and you had to just do everything yourself. And this was a bachelor's degree in interior design, which I wanted to do. So at the end of that term, I'd pulled 3 all-nighters. I was so stressed. I had spent so much money at Michael's that I did not expect to spend. I'm not talking like a couple $100. I'm talking probably $500 or more dollars for one semester of materials. That was not explained in the orientation. Did not know that. So I had to spend a lot of money out of my pocket beyond tuition and books and everything else and housing. This was separate. Was not expecting that. So it was a financial burden, and it was stressful. I had never pulled all-nighters before ever my entire life. I had to pull 3 to pull stuff off just because it was so hard. I can't even tell you like how cutthroat it was. There were people in my program who had already been interior designers practicing that just needed a degree, and they picked it up immediately. But I was so new to it, I had no idea. Long story short, after the portfolio review, they were like, sorry, we only take 12 students and you're like number 13. You can come back in the fall and you can redo, 2 classes and up like your portfolio if you wanted to, ante up your portfolio. But at that point I was so burned out. So was like, okay, well, what else are my options? I talked to my academic advisor at the time, and he was like, basically, if you want to stay in the College of Arts and Science or in like College of Fine Arts, you have to either do like art history, museum studies, studio art, or a BFA, which was also like a selective admissions program. I didn't really want to do museum or art history, so I was like, all right, studio art sounds cool. Because if I do, in my head, I was like, if I do studio art, maybe I could do like graphic design, and that's like similar to interior design. So I did that, and I took a graphic design class and hated it. Maybe it was just because of the instructor, but I didn't know what I was going to do with that major. I just wanted a bachelor's degree. Didn't even expect to get a master's degree while I was at FSU. Didn't even know I was going to get a master's degree at all, let alone two, but I will get to that in a second. So I ended up getting a bachelor's of arts in studio art and design at FSU. And then I decided to go into education kind of because I didn't really know what to do. And the master's in art education degree was only like a year and a half for a master's degree because they were taking some of my undergraduate credits and putting those toward the new master's degree. So I did that, and I was a teacher for 2 years. I taught high school and middle school, and I was a substitute teacher before that for a year. So I had like 3 years of teaching experience, and I loved it. But after COVID, bruh, especially not having a classroom, because in 2020, 2021, that school year, I didn't have a classroom. And I had to teach art on a cart, and it was miserable. No other teacher except me and maybe one other teacher didn't have a classroom. So I felt like the oddball, and it was just really hard that year, and the student behavioral issues were hard. So it made me want to go into higher education just to try that, because I didn't know what my options were. I was limited. I was like, okay, I have a master's degree in art education, I have a bachelor's in studio art. I didn't want to go into museum studies. Also, if you want to be a curator in the museum world, you have to work really hard. You have to climb the ladder, just like a lot of jobs, but you don't get paid well at first, and it's very time consuming and stressful. So I didn't want to do that. And I really didn't know what to do. I never sought out professional career advice. So I'm going to get into that too, because that's something that I'm kicking myself for. I had so many free resources when I was a student at Florida State University. Go Noles. I didn't utilize. So that's really what I'm talking about. So in 2021, 2022, that's when I started working into higher education. Y'all, this is so funny. I had a master's degree. I had 2.5, almost 3 years of teaching experience professionally. I was a go-getter, and I applied for so many different jobs at local colleges and universities, and there's only one college that really wanted me. I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought maybe I had to go back to school to get another degree, honestly. So I ended up working in a higher education. I started working at a one-stop student services, which was like basically a one-stop shop for all things registrar's office, admissions, financial aid, but they did a lot of stuff. I mean, like, I can't tell you. If you work in student services at a university, academic advising, career admissions, financial aid, especially financial aid, oh my gosh, registrar's records, anything like that, if you are student service facing, thank you for your service. It's not easy. I've been doing it for almost 4 years now. So I ended up going into higher education, and I did that for a year as a coordinator for One Stop, which is basically like an academic advisor, but again, more on the like student services side, getting into the university and all the way up to graduation. But after a year of that, I was like, I think I'd like to be an academic advisor, because I really like the counseling side, kind of like the one-on-one with the student side. So I ended up doing that for almost 2 years, and then I'm still doing that just at a different university, and I've learned so much. So it's been almost 4.5-ish years, I think. 4.5. I can't, honestly, I need to do the math, but it's been a long time. And while I was working at my other university, I decided to go back to school because I thought I wanted to go into communications and like media, like marketing kind of. I thought that would be a really cool job for me. So because I was working in the university, they paid for another master's degree. So I started that degree in 2022, and I just graduated in December of 2024. That master's degree took about 2 years. It was 36 credit hours, so it was 12 courses, and I did it in about 2.5 years, which is pretty good for 1 to 2 classes every term. And the cool thing about working in the university is they do pay for it. If you separate with the university, though, You are on your own. Learn that one the hard way. Especially read all the policies. Okay, I'm not going to divulge into that, but lay screwed. That's all I'm going to say. Okay, so anyway, after working into higher education, I was kind of looking into everything, and I was like, I love college. But then I was talking to some students, friends, colleagues, and I was like, college is hard. There's so many nuances, and that's what really inspired this episode. So I just wanted to share my backstory about my degree and everything. I will say my second master's degree in communication management, master's of science as well. It was definitely harder than art education because art education was more on like the educational classroom philosophy, psychology. It was more of the like philosophical, artsy kind of side, putting together lesson plans, curriculum development, TESOL, English language learners, working with all students. Again, a lot of psychology and philosophy involved, even some museum studies and a lot of art history. So it was very art focused, art for life, very social justice focused. So it was different. It was like very colorful, lots of different types of classes. With my communication management master's degree, it was communication studies, theory, research, qualitative research versus quantitative research, foundations of communication, ethics of communication. So it was just kind of blah, in my opinion. And I'm not trying to come at either of my alma maters because I'm grateful for all of my experiences. But I will say, if you want a really interesting master's degree, look at the classes, okay? Because I did a lot of research for my first master's degree in art education, but nothing like the master's degree in communication management. I felt like I was getting a PhD, so a doctor of philosophy degree, because it was so much research. I had to do a miniature thesis again, a research thesis, and it was hard. I did that for my art education degree, but it was a lot easier and more fun for me because it was more hands-on and it was cool. But I had to do a research thesis, and I did well. I got an A, but it was so hard. And I hate qualitative and quantitative research. I honestly think I like quantitative a little bit easier, even though I don't like doing studies and asking people for their opinions. But if you want to get a master's degree, it's not going to be as hands on, but look at the programs because there's online versus in person. If it's an in person degree, it's probably going to be very like hands on, applicable to the real world. Maybe there's like different themes like social justice or anything like that. But an online master's degree is probably going to be super research heavy, and you're going to be doing a lot of qualitative or quantitative research, gathering data from tons of different articles. For one paper alone, you'll add over 30 resources, which is not that bad. Some people have 60. So, but again, it's just a lot of it takes so much time. And yeah, I was working full time for my entire master's degree, my second one, not my first one, my second one. That's what made it so difficult. At one point, I did have to take a term off because I just needed a break, and that's always okay. So, when I was talking again with my colleagues about is college right for you, there's the online thing, there's a hybrid opportunity. So, if you wanted to take some classes in person versus online, you could do that. Or maybe you already have a degree or you're not sure if college is right for you. Look into certifications, look into vocational colleges, more technical jobs. There's so many different ways to get a degree. My opinion, start with an Associate of Arts degree. Make sure your credits will transfer if you wanted to go to a major state university or college, because don't mess up, man. I'm telling you, if I didn't have my associate's degree, FSU would have made me retake general education classes I had already taken. And I saw that too when I worked at my other university and when I work at my current university. Some transfer credits just don't transfer in. Look at the reciprocity agreement. Make sure everything equivocates. So when looking at everything, it's really important to look at options for tuition, in my opinion, if you are paying out of pocket. So how college works, there's different ways. You can pay everything out of pocket, which means that you are responsible for the bill in total. There are usually payment plans you can use. You can look into scholarships, or you can apply for financial aid through the federal government, which is the FAFSA website, which is studentaid.gov. So the FAFSA is a free application. So usually the general cost for local or state colleges will be $200 to $300 a credit hour. State university will usually, or Ivy League, I don't even know about Ivy League, but a state university is going to be at least $300 a credit hour, usually $350 per credit hour. So when you are assessing which colleges to go to, make sure you're looking at the tuition, make sure you're doing the math, because that's for undergraduate costs. Okay, y'all, graduate costs are double the price. So if you're not getting a tuition assistance through your employer, or you don't have like the grants or scholarship opportunities, you're going to be paying, you do the math, $12 to $2,000 a class, maybe. Oh my gosh, you want to do that? I don't think so. I don't want to do that. I never had to do that except for the last term of my degree because I separated with the university. So just make sure that you can plan accordingly, because if your degree is 120 credit hours and it costs $300 a credit hour, I need you to do that simple math. 300 times 120. Yes, and that's not including books, y'all. That's not including if you are living on campus, if you're living off campus and you have an apartment, the food, like these are all things you need to take into account. And a subsidized loan is what the government will pay interest free for you until you graduate. But if you're only qualifying for unsubsidized loans, that means that you're going to start having that interest taken out as soon as you borrow the money from the government. It's going to have higher interest rates. I don't know what the interest rate now is. I think it was like 2.5% or 3% back in 2021, 2022. It could be higher. I don't know. But loans aren't free money, and you have to maintain good academic status. You have to have a 2.00 GPA or higher. So in general, I learned as a student not to take out loans because I didn't want to have to pay that interest rate, because as a graduate student, by the way, you only qualify usually for unsubsidized loans. So then automatically you have to pay your interest rates. However, if you are an undergraduate student and you're 24 or older, you are considered independent on the FAFSA, which means that you could be eligible for more opportunities for grants and loans, but they do look at the tax information for you 2 years prior. So you do have to establish that. So if you didn't have a job or anything, that's going to affect it. If you did, X, Y, and Z, that's going to impact it. So the FAFSA is awesome, but look into scholarships, private scholarships, which means that it's not offered through your university, or you can look through the university scholarships. They always have scholarships that you can apply for. Talk to the financial aid offices, especially. I should have applied for more scholarships. I only got a couple when I was at FSU. I never applied for any when I was at UNF, but I should have applied for some. I don't know if I would have been eligible though, because I was getting tuition assistance through my employer. But I will tell you, scholarships, man, awesome. They're usually reoccurring. They're usually GPA based, merit based, or if you just have a great application for the scholarship, or they might be major based, or maybe undergraduate versus graduate. So there's a lot of information there. But yeah, work with these departments when you are applying for college. So can't stress this enough. Academic advising, try to see them at least once a year. I would say once every semester, just to make sure your degree evaluation is correct, that you know how many classes you have left until you graduate, answer all the important questions, resources for campus, all that jazz. Career advising, ask about your job opportunities, even if you are about to graduate, especially if you're about to graduate, but even if you're like, I know this is the degree for me, X, Y, and Z, still work with career services. A lot of the time, you might learn something that you didn't know. Or you can ask them, hey, does my resume look great? Hey, do I qualify for these jobs? What do I need? Do I need certifications? Do I need a different experience? Blah, blah, blah. Ask them all the questions. Once you're an alumni, you might not be able to use their services anymore. Sometimes, though, colleges will let you still utilize their services even as an alumni, which is really cool. But every university is different. So once you graduate, you might be on your own. So make sure you work with career advising before you graduate to look at your resume, internship opportunities maybe, just interview experience, all the things, because you don't know until you're out in the real world, and it's hard to find a job these days. Like, it really is. LinkedIn only goes so far. And then also academic support services such as tutoring, Instructors usually have office hours too, so make sure you're working with them. I met with my instructors a lot, especially for my undergraduate degree for office hours, because sometimes I just didn't understand important information, like especially science and math. That's where I struggled a lot. So I did go to office hours to ask a lot of questions, and they were amazing. That was my favorite thing in my undergraduate degrees. So speaking of undergraduate versus graduate degrees, so a master's versus a bachelor's degree. I want to talk about the differences and things that I would have done differently, because I kind of just put on my advising cap because I've been an academic advisor for over 4 years, but I want to come on back into where I was a student, because being a student, you learn so much, but you think you know a lot until you don't know a lot, right? So here are some things I would have done differently. I would not have applied to a selective admissions degree, because even though those classes, thank God, they counted for my free electives for my bachelor's degree, they did. So they counted towards my degree to graduate. I didn't have to take more free electives. Even though those classes did count, I still had to pay for them. They were stressful, and it didn't help me reach my degree for interior design because I ended up changing my major. So I was kind of out of luck on that one. I would have definitely worked with my academic advisor more. I had a great academic advisor. I had a not so great academic advisor. Some academic advisors just are stressed. It's like being a teacher. Usually they do overload academic advisors. Every university is different. I've had a 300 student caseload and I've had 200 student caseload. It's sometimes really hard when you have a student caseload that's 300 or more, because you're responsible for 300 plus students. Like, that's a lot of work. So be gentle with your academic advisor, right? But definitely talk and have that relationship. Be positive with your academic advisor. Be patient. Know that they are human. They make mistakes too, but be inquisitive and make sure that you understand your degree evaluation. Don't ever leave a meeting with your academic advisor freaked out that you don't understand something, because that's just not good for you or them. So that's my advice on that. And career advising, again, I never met with my career advisor at FSU or UNF, which I should have, because that would have really helped me, because I didn't know what I was going to do after college. I still don't really know what I'm doing, but I do love being an academic advisor, and I do love college in general. So as of right now, this is a great move for me. But I would have also applied to more scholarships or even financial opportunities like work study, or if I could have had graduate teaching assistantship. There's different opportunities, especially for graduate school. Sometimes you can apply for research grants too if you're getting a master's or a PhD or doctoral equivalent. So yeah, look for all those different opportunities. Save that money. Save that money, because if you have a FAFSA, if you're getting grants, that's something that you don't have to pay for. If you have scholarships, if you have work study, or if you can do like teaching grants or something or whatever, that pays for college, and then all the extra money comes back to you, and you can use it for, your life stuff, books, gas money, whatever you need. I think it's a great opportunity. So I did not do more research. I did not apply to enough scholarships. That's my own problem. So speaking of academic advisor, I thought about this a lot, but here are some conversations I would have had, and just in general for my academic advisor. Would have adding a minor in my in my undergraduate degree in communications looked differently? Would I have been able to apply for more jobs after college besides just teaching? Because I was afraid that I had no other choice. I had to be a teacher with my art education degree. So again, that's my own fault. I didn't do enough research, or I didn't ask enough questions. What experience am I going to need out of college, or need any more certifications? You do have to get a teaching certification in the state of Florida to teach. So those are some questions I would have asked. Maybe if I could have added another major, double major, I wouldn't have had to get a second master's degree. I didn't know what I was going to do. I could have even asked, could I go to a graduate degree in interior design at FSU? I didn't ask that question. I could have probably done that. I never asked that question. So ask the question to your academic advisor. Ask them for a printout of your degree evaluation, or how to find it. Ask them how many classes you have left for your degree and how long it's going to take if you take 2 classes a semester or a term versus 4 classes a semester or a term. Things can change, but essentially a bachelor's degree is anywhere from 3 to 5 years if you take 2 to 4 classes a term. But if you take 4 classes or more, it'll probably be anywhere from 2 to 3 years. A master's degree is usually 1 to 2 years, but if it's like a 50 credit hour master's degree, like a master's of business, sometimes those are a little bit higher. It might take up to 4 years. A master's degree just changes, right? So ask them how long it's going to take. Also, ask them if there's any employee benefits or if you can work at the university and get some tuition assistance and reimbursement. And just make sure that you read the policies and you get things in writing, even if the policies are outdated and they don't have the right information on it. Make sure that you have stuff from your human resource department if you work there, because if not, they could have taken money from you. Anyway, yeah, so that's kind of what I would have recommended as a student. Now, outside of that, maybe you have to save money and live with a roommate. And I lived with a roommate and it was great, but sometimes living by yourself is just easier, especially because like you don't have to worry about anything else, you know. But if you need a roommate, that's cool too. I had roommates off and on in college, and then I lived by myself. I prefer to live by myself until I met my husband, and then we moved in together. But that's kind of my little 10 cents on that. I also probably wouldn't have lived on campus my first year, even though it was really convenient living on campus. It was just so expensive, and I felt landlocked after a while. So I didn't get out much. Tallahassee is huge and vibrant and beautiful, but for my whole first year, so like fall and spring, I lived on campus and I didn't really do much because even though I had a car, parking on campus, pretty much any college, by the way, parking is a lot. But parking on campus was stressful, so I didn't really move my car much. I biked to class sometimes. I walked to class most of the times. It was a great exercise, but the Florida heat was awful, so sometimes I did take the bus. But I lived on campus for a year, then I moved off campus for the next 2 years. I liked living off of campus just because, again, an apartment usually has a gym, a pool, amenities. You have like kind of your own life. You know, you don't have to worry about if like your family visits you, is their car going to get towed? Blah, blah, blah. Like that's how serious college towns can be. I don't know how many times I got towed at FSU. I actually left my car in a parking garage one Saturday when they had a football game and it got towed. And that was $100. So if you live on campus that has football, just beware of the rules and parking zones. And even if like, you leave your car there for like 10 minutes, it will get towed. Like they don't play around, okay? And even tickets. Tickets are $30 usually on campus. So if you park somewhere you're not supposed to be, just make sure you read the signs, pay the $5 parking or whatever. It's definitely better than getting your car towed or getting a parking ticket. Usually tickets and stuff will leave holds on your account. So also you might not be able to register for classes. That's not fun. That's stressful too. So as a student, again, those are kind of some things that I've thought about. Now, if you work in college, I also did work. I didn't apply for scholarships. I could have done probably some more like work graduate assistantships in grad school, but instead I worked at a gym. Before that, I worked as a part-time manager for Vitamin Shop. I actually really liked that, but I liked working at the gym more just because I was able to do homework at the gym when it wasn't busy, or I could work out when it wasn't busy as long as I kept an eye on the front desk. And that helped my work-life balance because I was able to get caught up in my school life with various assignments, and then I also could get a workout in, so I wasn't skipping my health goals. So if I could go back, I probably would have just done that instead. It was easier. I was getting less money working at the gym, but I didn't have to pay for a gym membership. And I loved the FSU gym, but it was always really crowded, so I didn't have to deal with the crowded gym. And I was able to work out or do homework, and it just was a lot easier for me. So I really enjoyed that part. Now, I will say college, again, is so expensive. So if you're living on campus, it's going to be double the price probably living in an apartment. You want to think about food. You want to think about if you're going to have a meal plan or not. If you're going to be in a sorority or fraternity, I think they require you to have a meal plan. That's why I didn't do Greek life. That was the only reason. I almost rushed Pi Beta Phi because that was my grandmother's sorority, and I wanted to be like a legacy. But it was so expensive, y'all, at FSU. I mean, any big major like legacy university, it's way more expensive. But Greek life was gonna make me pay for a meal plan, and I think it was like I don't even know if it was $100 a week, but it was a ridiculous price. It was at least $60 a week, and I'm like, listen, I don't want to have to eat whatever's on the menu. I want to make my own food because I love to cook, and I was super into bodybuilding and health and fitness at the time too. So I decided not to do Greek life, and also I was a junior. Again, I had my AA degree, so I had 60 credits. That makes you a junior. So I was a junior by the time I got into Florida State, and I thought I only had 2 years until I graduated. I ended up graduating a year later with my master's as well, but I just didn't think that it was going to be a good experience for me. So I did not have a meal plan. I always made my own food. I will say this too, the great thing about being an upperclassman, which means that you're a junior or senior. So again, freshman is like usually 0 to 30 credit hours. Sophomore is usually 30 to 60 credit hours, junior is 60 to 90, and a senior is 90 to 120 credit hours. That's the classification for an undergraduate degree. But the cool thing about being a junior, 60 credit hours or more, is you're an upperclassman. I got to live in the bougiest, nicest place at FSU. And because I went there in the summer, it wasn't as busy. Fall and spring are always going to be busier times of the year. Students want summer vacation off to go home, X, Y, and Z. I loved starting the summer. It was less busy. It was a lot easier to get acclimated. My very first semester, I did not have my car because I had some car issues. So I didn't have my car until the fall. But I will say starting the summer was great for me. It was way better because fall is crazy at FSU. Football games, circus, parties, all the student body comes back. Like it's so 30,000 plus students, right? So I love summer and it was cheaper. And I got the bougie housing, which was Traditions Hall. I just went to FSU this past weekend, and there's like so many different different dorms now, resident halls, if you will. But when I was there, Traditions Hall was the nicest, and it had a kitchen. So I had my own room. I had a kitchen. I did have to share like the living space, living room, kitchen, bathroom, but it wasn't bad, and I loved it. And I liked having my own area. And my roommates were great. I loved my roommates, and we shared the fridge and stuff, and for the most part everybody got along, so it was really cool. But yeah, I was blessed with that because I didn't have to share just a room, right? I would never have enjoyed that. So if you're a freshman or sophomore and that's your only option, I'd highly encourage you to look into apartments and look into maybe even working for that apartment complex to get cheaper rent or something like that. Or if you can be a resident assistant, so an RA for your dorm, for the upperclassmen dorms, do it. Do it. It's worth the work. I was never an RA, but if I had to do that to live in Traditions, I totally would have, because like I wanted my own kitchen. I like to cook my own food. Nothing against the meal plans at FSU and the dining halls, but like it gets old. It's pretty much the same food, like not always super healthy, and you get tired of it. And you want to save your money for other things. Like you want to be able to get your own coffee or Einstein bagels or Starbucks or Chick-fil-A. I wanted to be able to have my own money and have more autonomy with my bills and everything. So I never had a meal plan, never did Greek life. I can't speak to that, and I'm grateful for it. I think that it made me hold myself accountable for eating healthier and all that jazz. But if you don't have a car, if you're on campus, or it's just better for you, get a meal plan. Why not? Or you can like load your card with dining dollars. Usually it works on different places on campus, so like Starbucks or X, Y, and Z. But the bookstore and Starbucks and everything on campus, the Union with all the restaurants and stuff, it's going to be more expensive than like the real world. Just because it's like Disney. When you go to Disney, you got Disney prices, college prices, same thing. That's how they make their money. College is our business. So that was really everything my experience. I can't go back and change much except for not applying for the interior design program. That's the only thing that I would have changed. And it's not because I didn't get in. It's just because I realized that's not what I wanted to do. It was more architecture, and I wanted to do like decorating, like design. And who knows, maybe I'll still be an interior designer or an interior decorator one day. I won't have a license, I don't think. But, don't let your dreams be dreams. I still love to design. I still love to decorate. You don't need a degree for that necessarily. But like, yeah, I think that with a degree, it's okay if you don't know how you're going to use it. But also realize too that if you're not going to use it, is it worth the money just to have a piece of paper? Do you need that piece of paper for whatever job? Sometimes you do need a bachelor's degree for your job. Sometimes that's what you need to get a raise or promotion at work. Sometimes you do need that to be more successful in whatever career field you want to go into, if it's a different career field. So look at your options. And I can't stress this enough. Work with the career services, work with academic advisors, ask them questions, give them everything that you're not sure about, put it on them. If they don't know the answer, they can give you at least the resources and the knowledge and the ideas for you to feel better about your degree. So is college right for you? I don't know. I wouldn't change it for the world. I have my 4 degrees and I'm very blessed. And I'm also an adjunct college instructor now as well on the side, but I'm only teaching a class here and there, so it's not my full-time job, but that's fun too. And I love it. And I probably wouldn't have been able to do that without my master's degree. So I'm very grateful for both of them and all my experience in being a teacher and learning and the process. It's funny though, as I've gotten older, even with more degrees and more experience, I still feel like I have so much to learn. People keep asking me, are you going to get a doctoral degree and be Dr. Haley? The answer is no. And it's not like I'm against a PhD or a doctoral degree. I just don't know what I would research. And that's what a PhD is. You're going to be writing a dissertation. The only thing I could think of would probably be, again, something in education or psychology. But I don't want to do that. So, yeah. But I hope this podcast really helped you. And I hope that was more information than you anticipated because, again, I have learned all the things. I have learned everything, not everything, but I've learned so much in my experience. And I think, FSU was the right school for me, for sure. I went to UNF, but I wasn't a full-time student. I had a full-time job, so that was for fun kind of thing. So, but FSU was my favorite school out of all the 3 schools I went to, and I wouldn't have changed it for the world. You learn so much as you grow. But yeah, just don't not look into all the options. Don't not apply to scholarships. Please apply to them. Please talk to career services and advising. Please look into different programs if you do not like your major. Be like me, change your major. But after 60 credit hours, it might be hard to change your major. So make sure you're having these conversations with your advisor and people in your corner, with your family, with your friends. Have that support system, Again, I really, really hope this episode was helpful. If you want me to do a part 2, I can totally do that. I couldn't think of really anything else to talk about, but when it comes to college, if you have a lot of questions, I am your resource. I'm still learning all the things. So again, thank you so much for supporting my podcast. Thank you for following me. Thank you for subscribing to my channel on YouTube. Thank you for following me on Spotify and Instagram. The love really, really is awesome. And next podcast, I promise I'll have my dog on it. Okay, I promise. She's just teething right now, so she needed a nap. But next podcast, I will definitely have Prudence on it. So look forward to that. All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you next time. Bye.